In previous video, we learned about what is client-side code and what is server-side code. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys an example of a server-side vulnerability and a client-side vulnerability. So basically, we're going to start by navigating to PortSugar. By the way, if you haven't checked it out, you must check out PortSugar. It's a great resource for web security and web vulnerability. A lot of great content for learning, and yeah, it's really good. And you guys must check it out as it's all for free. Right? Basically, any vulnerability can be classified as of two types: server-side vulnerabilities and client-side vulnerabilities. Let's start by directly showing you an example of a server-side vulnerability. So on PortSugar, you'll go to learning path. Once you go there, you will have server-side topics and then client-side topics. So for server-side topics, we are gonna pick authentication because it's the really basic one and it's very easy. Along with that, it's very common. So let's try to do one authentication lab. So if we navigate to all the lab section, we have user enumeration where different responses. So we'll be solving this lab. It's a server-side vulnerability that a person can basically enumerate the users as there is no rate limiting, and then they can brute force the password as well, right? So let me zoom in for you guys. This lab is vulnerable to user enumeration and password brute force attack. Okay, we have these word lists. We need to download these word lists first. We need to copy it. To solve lab, enumerate a valid username, brute force this user's password, then access their account switch. Okay, so first we'll have to click on access lab, and let's copy these usernames and passwords into the file. I have already copied the usernames and the passwords. If you can see, so you can see I already have these two files here in my word list directory, and I've copied all the username from here and the passwords from here, right? All the usernames and passwords have been copied. We have everything in order to brute force this. So let's open Burp Suite. After opening Burp Suite, let's go to the Intercept tab and open a browser. Now what will happen is anything that's going through this browser will be intercepted, and we can see that in Burp Suite, right? So let's navigate to this lab page, and in history we are already seeing these requests coming in. Now we are gonna brute force this login page. So first we need to enumerate the user. Now it's saying invalid username, right? So what we'll do is we'll see this request, we'll take it into repeater, and I'll be using Turbo Intruder to brute force this. So right click, extensions, Turbo Intruder, send to Turbo Intruder. Now in the code snippets, you can use basic.py, and in the dictionary file, you'll have to add the file name in which you save the usernames. So this was the file, usernames_burp. In the request, you can see on the above panel, you can see the request. You can see two parameters, that is username and password, going into post request. You'll use % to mark the injection point there. So Turbo Intruder will use this word list and inject here. And the request per connections, let's reduce this to around 30. Request per connections 30, concurrent connections 5. Now let's attack and see if we can find any valid user. So basically we are brute forcing the username, right? So username Carlos, and here you can use render tab to exactly check the response. And there is no user that is named Carlos here. And we are testing all these payloads that we have copied from PortSugar website only. We have completed the attack, I think. Now in 15 seconds we send around 95 requests, So now let's just click on length, and we can see that if we sort the responses by length, all these other requests are containing 3038 length and containing invalid username, but on this particular response, after sorting with length, we know that this contains 3040 and the length is different here, right? When we use AU, the payload is AU and the password is test, and then we are getting incorrect password. So yeah, this is basically a vulnerability through which we can enumerate the usernames, because in the response, if the username is invalid, this web server is showing invalid username in response, and if the username is valid, it's showing incorrect password. So we have identified our user, that is username equals to AU. Now let's take this request into repeater. We'll again launch a brute forcing attack, and we'll brute force the password of this particular user. In the repeater tab, you can replay the request, like this is the request, this is the response, and you can click render if you want to like see the response correctly. So yeah, let's use extension turbo intruder, send to turbo intruder. In the code snippet, we're gonna use basic. We'll change the request for connection because we don't want to go too fast. We don't want to DOS the lab, of course, that won't be good. In the word list, we'll change it to passwords underscore burp, and yeah, this is pretty much it. And don't forget to include a injection marker here. So what turbo intruder will do is read from this, that is read from this file name and use every line and inject it here into the %s in the injection marker that we have set. And the request per connection, let's change it to 30. We don't want to go too fast. And yeah, let's start. And as you can see that some requests are getting broken up, and it does happen with turbo intruder sometimes depending on the connection, because yeah, so it's saying missing parameter. This is very interesting. Oh, because it's the payload of nothing. Cool, that makes sense. Now if we sort it through status code, we are getting 302 on dragon. So yeah, this basically means we sorted it through 302. Sometimes you sort it through length also, like we can also sort through length also, because length is also going to be different. So even if we sort it through length, it will be easier to find this out, the dragon keyword. And even through status code also you can sort it. You can also sort it through words if you like. So here it is, right? And this basically allows us to log in. Okay, now we know username is AU, we know password is dragon. Now let's log into it, AU and dragon. Instead I'll just copy paste it, like right click, paste, then right click, copy, paste, and log into this. And yeah, we're able to log in and we have solved the lab. That's great. Now this was a server-side vulnerability. The mitigation of this vulnerability is to implement rate limit on the brute forcing of login page. The second thing is don't show different messages when an incorrect user is trying to log in, right? So you don't want, if you want to mitigate user enumeration, you must keep the response simple. Even if the user is entering right username or incorrect username, you'll show a same message as long as the password is not correct. If the username is correct and password is correct, of course you're gonna log them to it, right? You're allowed to log into the account. And after this, let's start with the client-side vulnerability. So let's close this. Now we're gonna do one client-side vulnerability as well. So as I explained you guys earlier as well, web vulnerabilities can be classified into two types, that is server-side vulnerability and client-side vulnerability. Now we have already completed server-side vuln. Now let's do a lab on client-side topic. So we're gonna pick cross-site scripting here. and it's the most common vulnerability, if you ask me, on a web page. So yeah, now let's do a lab. Search for cross-site scripting. We're gonna do this basic lab right now, and yeah, so let's check it out. We'll click here. Let's read the lab description here for a minute. This lab contains a simple reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability. So this is a reflected XSS, okay, in the search functionality. So they basically gave us everything, right? So yeah, let's try this. So let's access this lab, and I'm also gonna show you guys what you can do to like find these kind of vulnerabilities very easily and how you can verify it. Let's copy the lab URL and go to proxy history and clear history, because we don't want other junk right now. We don't want previous labs request or anything like that. We navigated here. The lab description already told us that the XSS is in the search functionality. So what we are gonna do is, we will first, like, it's always best to not directly use XSS payload and instead use HTML tags to see are you able to inject HTML. So here you injected this U tag, and what this tag will do is it will underline the next tag, anything after that. So yeah, you use this U tag for underlining and you search. So as you can see in the get parameter, that is like in the get request, the parameter search is going with value high, and you entered here high and then this U tag, and yeah, it's underlined, right? So HTML is executing. One more thing that you can do here now is you'll just use this URL and just add a script tag and use alerts1, and then just close the script tag and just remove this whole, and just even remove this as well, right? So this is being executed, right? So yeah, here we solve the lab. One interesting thing that I want to tell you guys about is, suppose you do the same thing in Google, right? So in Google, if you send $Q equals to testing, it's kind of similar, right? You're sending the Q parameter and the testing is getting displayed, and you're sending h1 tag, right? And you're wondering that you are able to see this HTML content here, but it's not executing. You are able to inject HTML there and it's not executing, right? But the thing is that these kind of texts are already encoded here. So if you go here and if you right click on this text and click on inspect, so you'll see that H1 is there, and some people wonder that why it's not executing, because so a lot of people have asked me that they're able to see this tag and why is it not executing, right? So you can always check what's happening here if you right click on this and inspect, and then wherever you're seeing this text, so this is the text, and you right click here and you click as edit as HTML, and you see your tag is completely changed to this, right? And what is this? So basically this is an encoding that is used to display these characters, and yeah, if you use these characters, they will appear as a normal angular brackets, but these are not the angular brackets that will get executed, right? So these are not the brackets that will get executed, because if you right click on them and inspect on them and then use edit as HTML, so you can clearly see that it's outputting as like %LT semicolon and %GT semicolon. So it's getting HTML encoded, and that's why H1 is not executing this way. But if you use H1 this way, then it will execute. So just to explain you the difference, I'll just use this, and then I'll use ampersand LT Q ampersand GT. This will not execute, right? And we are going to do the same thing that we did here and just do it this way, and yeah, add a semicolon. So now if you click on it, so as you can see, our first thing got executed, but now this is not getting executed, right? So if you're seeing something like this on a website, it's always best while testing for XSS or HTML injection to just see the reflection, right click on it, inspect it, and in the inspection you'll see something like this and you'll wonder why is this not executing. And if you click on it and if you right click and edit as HTML, then you'll realize that okay, this is getting encoded. So that's why I'm seeing this. So this is basically secure if it is getting properly encoded, right? But if it's not getting encoded, that is like here we were able to inject the tag, and here we weren't able to inject the tag because the LT sign, the less than sign and the greater than sign was getting perfectly encoded, right? Because we did it, right? Like, so yeah, if something is getting filtered like this, then yeah, you know that it's getting filtered, it's getting encoded, and it will not execute. So the best thing to do if your output is getting encoded like this, so suppose on Google you're entering this, right? You directly enter this and it's getting encoded into like ampersand LT, so like it's getting HTML encoded, your best bet. And like, so what you will try here is basically try to find out what kind of characters are not getting HTML encoded and how you can leverage these kind of characters to create a DOM XSS or a store XSS or anything like that, right? So this is pretty much it. I tried to keep this video short. If you have any doubts or like any suggestions, please comment down below. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Bye.